Hello everybody and welcome to the Tuesday edition of Video Clips, and as usual I'm going to start with a couple of announcements. The first one is our new initiative, Citizens in Charge, on Thursday, the 4th of July, which I think is remarkably appropriate. This video will be allocated to explaining how this is going to work, giving you all the details. So you want to make sure that you're watching video clips on the 4th of July. Normally, I take a week like this off, but there's no taking any time off until we accomplish our goal, which is to make Americans free people again. We're not free people. So I will explain everything, and then on Tuesday of next week will be when we push the go button. And there's some reasons for this that have to do with making sure we have everything ready to go here, because believe it or not, sometimes my people who I work with, they want to take holidays off, and so it'd be a bad idea to push the button on the 4th of July when they don't want to work on that day. And I totally understand it, and so that's the way we're going to do it. So Thursday, make sure you get everybody watching video clips on Thursday of this week. I'm very excited. Yesterday's newsletter article contains a lot of data, lots of references, lots of data about this whole ridiculous situation from the get-go, contrasting some of the ridiculous predictions with what really happened. It's an interesting thing, Mr. Fauci tends to write about things in medical journals much differently than what he says to the public when he has access to the public, and I think that's interesting. I would like it if he said the same thing all the time, or if he even said the same thing for 2 weeks in a row. That would be great. But anyway, just to let you know, if you're a newsletter subscriber, you're getting these. And if you're not a subscriber, we will send you the back issues if you subscribe, but we are not sending out individual articles. We just have no capacity to do that here. So pampopper@msn.com if you want to be a subscriber and get yesterday's as well as the rest of what we call the COVID collection. Transcripts of the video clips, by the way, are posted on the members site. And so I'm a little behind on posting, but by the time you're watching this, we'll be caught up with that. So if you're not a member, you might consider joining. You get access to those transcripts, our articles library, which includes dozens of articles on vaccines and vitamin D. I mean, I think there's 15 or 1,700 articles in there totally. So lots of resources there, dozens of videos, teleconference classes, Q&A sessions, all kinds of member benefits. Ask the Therapist, sessions with our PT, really good value. So you guys ask me sometimes, what can I do to help? Buy things from us. That's how I'm financing all of this, okay? So become a member and take a look at what we offer. And then one last thing, well, next to the last thing, the forbidden video that was taken off. It's kind of like a badge of honor, right? It's now posted on BitChute, B-I-T-C-H-U-T-E. Just put my name in the search engine, it comes up. And by the way, we're putting all of these videos there, so if you see anything taken down for any reason, you can go there and find it. And last but not least, many of you know that I have a book coming out, probably the end of August, beginning of September, someplace along that line. And it's called COVID Operation, What Happened, and What's Next. And many of you are asking me all kinds of questions. Who's behind this? What happened, right? Well, can't say it on here. Too much to write, except for in a book. And if you'd like a preview, I'm doing these workshops. They are paid workshops, by the way. One of them will be here in the office on the 25th of July. I'm going to do one teleconference on the 24th. We tape all of it so you can have access to it later. But if you're interested in any of the things I'm talking about today, just send me an email at pampopper@msn.com. Remember, Thursday. All right. So let's talk about all the COVID madness going on. And the first thing I thought you would want to hear about is that Joe Biden, the presumed nominee for the Democratic presidential nomination, says he would use the federal powers of the presidency to require all Americans to wear masks in public to fight the coronavirus pandemic if he was president. Now, why this is important is that right now, as it stands, local government is deciding what to do. And local government is doing a terrible job. That's what we talk about. That's what I talk about every week. That's what you guys email to me. But at least you can put pressure on local government. I think all you guys know that the federal government is the immovable force. And so if we end up with a president who wants to nationalize everything and all the lockdowns and rules and regulations that you're dealing with now are national, we're never getting out, all right? So he said this in a Thursday interview with KDKA, the CBS affiliate in Pittsburgh, if you want to look it up and watch it yourself. And he said he would use all the powers at his disposal to force Americans to wear masks if he was in office. He says, quote, "The one thing we do know is these masks make a gigantic difference. I would insist that everybody out in public be wearing that mask. Anyone to reopen would have to make sure that they walked into a business that had masks." And asked if he meant that he would use the executive power to mandate mask wearing, he said, quote, "From an executive standpoint, yes, I would. I would do everything possible to make it required that people had to wear masks in public." So I can't fault him for not following the science. Nobody seems to be following the science right now. But I certainly don't want anybody in the presidency office and the office of the president who's going to start issuing national mandates for all this stuff. I mean, at least we can scream and holler and deal with our elected officials. And I'm much closer to the governor of Ohio, for example, to scream and holler about something than I am to the president of the United States, where I have absolutely no hope of even anything I say ever filtering to that person. So just thought you would like to know that. And then, all kinds of nonsense going on out there, including some data manipulation, which I'll share with you at the end of this, but I'll just start here. I thought this was interesting. Please, this is an email I got from somebody. Please find a copy of a bill from my friend's mother's COVID-19 test for $3,039.87. She's in an assisted living facility in the Boston, Massachusetts area. My friend called Blue Cross Blue Shield to ask about the bill, and he was told that this was for a single COVID test. And the reason he called is he didn't understand all the individual charges, and if you've ever seen a hospital bill, you understand that nobody ever understands all the charges, right? In addition, they told him not to worry, as Congress passed a bill that pays for all COVID tests, so he'll have no responsibility. Well, isn't that swell? We're going to pay $3,000 for COVID tests that probably cost $5, and the government pays for it, which means you and I are paying for it. All right, so we know why everybody's so enthusiastic. It's a big money deal. No wonder everybody wants to test everybody, right? Okay, so here's one that's just crazy. My daughter lives about a mile away, pays her own rent in her own townhouse with a disability pension, and happens to have caregivers around the clock, intellectual and developmental disabilities, as well as past trauma. She has no roommate, but she cannot see or visit her mom, and if she does, we're told in March she must remain with me forever. Also, no going in caregivers' cars on the city bus, taxi, or Uber. She has no physical health problems, but caregivers must wear gloves and masks at all times. One caregiver chooses to wear a face shield. Can't have too much protection when you're around humans, right? After much advocacy, I'm allowed to talk to her on her property while standing on her patio and her inside, both of us on our phones. This is such a wonderful way for humans to communicate with one another. More advocacy, more phone calls. A psychiatrist had to give a prescription to reduce the trauma and make up for the isolation. We're allowed to visit outside now with her sitting inside her garage and me no longer on the property but 20 feet away on city property sidewalk. We have to shout due to traffic from the thruway and air conditioner hum. So there's nothing better than talking to your daughter from 20 feet away on a city sidewalk, screaming at the top of your lungs to have conversation. You can see where that would lead to a lot of great communication. These are truly great moments in public health, and I think that the people who make these rules should be, you just wonder, what's the dinner time conversation? I am so proud of myself. I actually have some video footage of family members screaming at each other because I won't let them near each other. Well, it gets better. 3 months in, and it's time for a specialist checkup. And I, as her POA for personal care, and mom must travel separately in my own car. Can't have family members in the same car, for crying out loud. She has special permission to travel in the back seat of a caregiver's car with mask and gloves. While in the room with the specialist, my daughter and I enjoy a loose embrace, and my daughter happens to mention it later in the day to one of her caregivers. The very next day, I'm telephoned by a manager, informed of our misdemeanor, and basically asked if it was true. Did you actually hug your daughter? I can't think of anything worse. No wonder the authorities are so upset with us all the time. I wasn't asked if we still had our mask and gloves on, which we did, but was informed that this would be reported to the CEO. Definitely you want to report this. People hugging, people in the same room. This is terribly dangerous stuff, and we cannot have it, right? This telephone call takes place one day after our provincial premier announces we can now hug our families and go into stage 2 of loosening restrictions, opening up the malls and restaurants and walking trails. I go to the mall today, many stories to tell there. I actually enjoy the cheery welcome back and we miss you signs in many of the stores, but the one that cracks me up is the one that says most often, stand here to be let in. Ruff, ruff. Yeah, stand here to be let in. I mean, yeah, we're just being treated like serfs and servants, and we're under tyrannical rule for sure. All right. On to the next thing, and this is hysterical. In Virginia, south of Winchester, we have a drive-in movie. Well, the nutcase owner makes people going to the movie and sitting in their cars wear masks. And so I wrote back to the guy who sent this to me. Apparently, he doesn't understand the coronavirus does infect cars, and if you can't afford to replace your car, you need to be very careful, and even wear masks if you're in the same garage as your car. I mean, you just cannot take this risk. And so, so anyway, I hope you guys know that. I mean, if you're hanging around cars without a mask, I just don't know what level of irresponsibility that represents at this point in time. All right, so moving on, you might have read about this already, but Lincoln County in Oregon is a mandated policy of wearing masks in all public places, but this does not count for people of color. They don't have to wear the mask, all right? And that was because they could be racially targeted. Well, I don't know how much more racially targeted you could be than to say, if you are African American, I assume that would mean Hispanics and Asians. I don't know where it goes, but what I think is we should all start declaring that we're people of color, or we have some type of ethnicity that exempts us from the mask wearing. Okay, so if you're Jewish or Presbyterian or whatever, I definitely think that you should declare that as an exemption. I mean, if I was a person of color, I would be extremely offended by this. I mean, thank God you don't have to wear the mask kind of thing. I would assume that you might feel that way, some of you anyway. But talk about discrimination. Nothing like watching people of color not have to wear the mask to make other people resentful. So as if I had done a video before about, you know, they want to turn us against each other. Great example, okay? So let's not let them do it. So in an act of solidarity, let's just all take off the masks. I think that would be a great idea. Okay. Person went in for a dental cleaning, had to wear a mask, took it off for a cleaning with the hygienist, which took 30 to 40 minutes. And while I waited 2 minutes for the dentist, I had to put the mask back on, because when you're alone in a room, you must wear your mask. It's sort of like being in the garage with a car. You just really don't want to take any chances, right? I work at the University of Colorado Research Complex. 8 stalls in the bathroom, but we can only have 1 person in there at a time, but 4 people can ride in the elevator, a much smaller space. My sister-in-law was in an accident and in the hospital with a blood clot in her heart. Only my brother was allowed to be with her, but only from 10 a.m. to 6. When they administered the clot-dissolving drug near 6 p.m., they said he had to leave for the day, even though he'd already been there for 8 hours, and he could call the nurse's station in a few hours to see how the procedure went. Every day, he missed the doctor's rounding, learning how to change her wound dressing, and was only allowed an exemption to enter early on her last day there after he threw a big fit. So definitely, if you've been there for 8 hours, you cannot stay any longer, because the virus begins to become virulent after an 8-hour period of exposure. So even though a crucial procedure is going on and you might like to be there for your wife, you cannot take these kinds of chances, I'm telling you. And if we don't start behaving, they're going to discipline us. They keep telling us that, right? All right, here's another one about masks, which is hysterical. The Emperor of Nevada, used to be known as Governor Steve Sisolak, has announced that everyone must wear a mask in public, even when they can social distance by 6 feet. So either the social distancing doesn't work and we need a mask, or the social distancing works and I don't understand why we need a mask. But anyway, there you got to do both, because in Nevada they want to be uber careful. I bet people who are walking by cars, I bet you're not allowed to go to a car dealership unless you've been quarantined for 14 days before because of the transmission to cars, which I covered earlier. All right, so here are the exemptions. Homeless people, incarcerated people who are in closer quarters than anyone else, but they don't need a mask, right? Children under the age of 9, those who have a medical condition such as breathing difficulties, and apparently those who don't want to, since there are no civil or criminal penalties. So I've said before, they're not locking us up yet, but sooner or later they'll start to do that for people who insist on not following the rules. All right, so I have a lot of documents supporting this very interesting situation. Washington State Department of Health, a June 2020 announcement changing criteria to record deaths from COVID-19, how they're the process of doing it. And this is direct from the document. Okay, I printed it out, and here it is. Until now, we counted all people who died that tested positive for COVID-19. This method identifies people who had the virus but fails to tell us whether COVID-19 caused their death. So we knew that we were reporting false information, but we did it anyway. Our goal from the beginning of the outbreak, again, I'm reading you what it says, was to get data out in near real time so the healthcare providers, policymakers, and public health professionals had access to the most current information. Now, apparently, current but not accurate. So speed was the thing, accuracy, yeah, not so much. Okay, this is the Department of Health. So truth-telling is going to be introduced in phases. You know how when you're going to start telling the truth, you just don't want to all of a sudden start doing it. That's crazy. So here are the phases. So phase 1 for truth-telling is we're going to remove deaths, the state of Washington, where COVID-19 did not contribute to death from our death count. That's a good idea. For phase 1, this will result in, they said, 7 deaths being removed from our current death count, including 2 suicides, 3 homicides, and 2 overdose deaths. 4 of the deaths are from King and 3 are from Yakima. Additional non-COVID-19 deaths may be removed throughout the course of the COVID-19 outbreak. Phase 2 of the truth-telling, expand how we report deaths to identify whether we can confirm or rule out COVID-19 as a contributing cause of death, including identifying probable and suspected death. Will this change the numbers? They say yes, already 7 have been removed, 2 suicides, 3 homicides, and 2 overdoses, and these were just through 2 counties and looking at their data. And I would think homicide and suicide would have been easy to tell. You can see where the confusion would be. This person died by homicide, but we're going to code it as COVID because we're really not sure. Lots of doubt there. But there are even bigger discrepancies. I checked the Yakima Health District, and it reports 108 COVID deaths, while the Washington State Department of Health reports 156. So DOH is off by 38, not 3, on this particular county. Now, there's a third phase of truth-telling in a few weeks, because telling the truth is always something you want to phase in. I mean, this sudden burst of truth-telling, you got to be careful about that. Deaths will be reported in categories which include confirmed, probably suspect, and not COVID. I'm just wondering why we can't do it right now. I mean, you know, but again, this truth-telling thing, you got to phase it in. It's really kind of unusual, I guess. Well, it's about time, and it's also time for the Emperor of the state of Washington to be deposed. I reported on this earlier, but I'm going to go back and review. The Freedom Foundation investigated and reported on this May 18th after getting written data from the Washington State Department of Health officials. When confronted with data from his own health department, Inslee responded that it was quote, disgusting and malarkey, and accused the Freedom Foundation of, quote, fanning these conspiracy claims from the planet Pluto and not caring about people who died from COVID. Okay, so he calls the data from his own health department conspiracy theories from the conspiracy claims from the planet Pluto. Well, it's your health department. If you think that they're fanning conspiracy theories, why don't you do something about it? Well, it's that truth-telling thing. It's just don't want to do too much of that. DOH held a press briefing on May 21st, during which it confirmed that reported deaths were inflated, and then, quote, we currently do have some deaths that are being reported that are clearly from other causes, including some from gunshot wounds. Yeah, but if you count them as COVID deaths, then you get everybody all scared and frightened, and you can mandate things and contact trace and rule like a ruler. And why would you want to tell the truth when you could have all that fun, right? Freedom Foundation reported that 6 counties out of the whole state were reporting accurate data, and then DOH was then inflating the numbers. So DOH was deliberately taking the data that the counties were accurately reporting and increasing the numbers, because the Emperor of Washington State wants to stay ruler, and one of the ways you stay a ruler is you keep everybody scared, all right? Well, I thought you'd enjoy some of that, and I appreciate that some of you appreciate my sarcasm, and I you know, I'm not going to apologize for it anymore. I don't know what other kind of response you can have to this type of absolute nonsense and criminal activity. It's criminal activity, this is, okay? And for anybody who's still buying this load of crap, I'm just interested in what kind of, I just can't even fathom what is going on in the minds of somebody who listens to this, because it's easy enough to verify. And I will share with you later this week, some people who watch my channel have said, I decided to check it out, and oh my gosh, you're right, they are faking the numbers. All right, so That's all for today. As usual, pass this on to anybody who you think would benefit from watching it. I will be back to you tomorrow with more news.